Hey guys, welcome to D4 Sports. I'm your host, James Alba, and I'm so honored to be here. Shout out to my guys over at Southern Bottle for putting me on this spot and giving me the opportunity to have a voice here in the sports community. During this time of quarantine, what a better opportunity to get my fix of sports in for the day than coming on here and talking to you guys. Appreciate, the ability to do this and appreciate those of you listening. All right. A little bit about myself. I'm a big sports guy. I live it, I breathe it. I'm a football coach at St. John the Baptist, a local high school in Long Island where I'm from. I'm the OC over there. I have been coaching over there for 6 years now. I love all sports, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, you name it. Huge fan of all of them. And, just wanted to come out here, shoot this show, give you guys a little bit of an idea where my mind is at, all things sports. And I'm excited to hear what you guys think too. Only thing we really got coming up, and down the pike, is really the NFL draft. And to be honest, it's probably my favorite time of the year, sports wise, to be talking about it. I'm a huge draft guy. I watch countless hours of film. I know so many of these prospects, and I just want to share some of my thoughts on the top guys. And that's what this video is going to be. This episode today is going to be all about my prospect rankings. I'm going to go through each position, sort of give you guys my rankings, top five for each position, and just where I'm thinking in terms of these prospects, where I see them fitting, and where I see where I see them on draft day. So buckle up, enjoy. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, whatever you got to do. Let's get this channel growing, and I'm so happy to be here. So quarterbacks. Pretty consensus with the top three. My number five guy is going to be Jalen Hurts, coming from Oklahoma. Really good prospect. Started at Alabama for a year, replaced by Tua, stuck around. Really good teammate. He has those intangibles that people look for. I see him as a late round guy. I shouldn't say late, but maybe mid round guy. Like late third round type of guy. Fit in with like a Patriots team or a Raiders team looking for a late round flyer on a guy that they could use and maybe groom into a potential starter. He has that skill set that the league is sort of going to in terms of those mobile quarterbacks and has a ton of upside. Jordan Love's going to be my number four guy, coming out of Utah State. Small school prospect. Big questions you have with him are, what was the level of competition he was playing against, and what was the level of talent on his roster? The level of talent on his roster was not very good whatsoever. Ton of drops. A lot of his interceptions this year came, because of receivers tipping passes in the air and, creating turnovers based off of good throws from Jordan Love. And, level of competition wasn't great at Utah State, but you see the tools and you see the talent with a guy like this. I think he's a first-round quarterback, a little bit of a production drop-off between 2019 and 2018. 2018, he was phenomenal. Really looked like a first-round caliber quarterback. This year, not so much. But again, that's more attributed to lacking weapons and lacking offensive firepower from the guys around him. So I think he's a first-round guy. I could see a team like the Colts trading up into the first, get that fifth-year option on him and make a play for Jordan Love. So he's my number four. Number three, Justin Herbert out of Oregon. I'm a big Oregon fan. Justin Herbert has all the talent in the world to be a top-flight quarterback, rocket arm talent, really athletic, ran 4.68 at the combine, standing at 6'6", and 230 pounds. He looks like Cam Newton out there when he has everything clicking. Big problem for him, though, is consistency. He'll have a great game in the Rose Bowl against Wisconsin, but then he looks terrible against a team like, Auburn week one. Inconsistent production. He's a super smart kid, classroom junkie. He got an academic award from the NCAA this year at Oregon. Really smart dude in the classroom. He's going to be my number three guy just because he needs to be able to show that he is a consistent performer at the top level. I think anybody that takes him has to give him some time to sit and develop behind a veteran. And that's my thoughts on Justin Herbert. Tua is going to be my number two guy. He's coming from Bama. Big question with Tua is obviously durability and health. The hip this year, the ankle injuries the years prior. If he can be healthy, he would be a number one pick type of player. The only reason he's not is because Joe Burrow, I just think, is so much better in terms of just overall talent. But Tua, the big question is that durability. A team in the top five can certainly draft him based off talent, but you have to be comfortable with the fact that, hey, this guy does have a dirty history in terms of injuries and in terms of health. you don't want your quarterback missing games. I mean, we saw it in 2018 with the 49ers. They lose Jimmy G and they end up with the second overall pick. They weren't the second overall pick, type of a team in terms of talent, but when your quarterback it goes down and you don't have a viable backup, that's what you're dealing with. So that's the risk you take with Tua. Super good player, super high upside, great production at Bama, really good receiving core around him. But he's a phenomenal player. I would take him in the top 5 if I didn't have the injury history or the injury concerns. That leads me to Joe Burrow. What a season for this guy. Heisman Trophy, national champion, 60 touchdown passes at LSU. Joe Brady, his OC, gets an offensive coordinator job in the NFL now with the Panthers because of the great year that Joe Burrow had. A lot of guys on his roster are going to end up being high picks because they were part of that offense. Justin Jefferson this year, Jamar Chase next year, Clyde Edwards-Helaire this year. So he had talent around him. He had weapons around him, but Joe Burrow is just an absolute technician, knows how to dissect defenses, knows how to read coverages. Also really sneaky in terms of maneuvering the pocket. He can escape and maneuver really good, and I really enjoy him as a prospect. He is one of the better quarterback prospects that I've seen, and I would take him with that first pick and not even look back. Cincinnati, guy from Ohio, keep him home, bring him back, and let him be the face of your franchise. For my running backs are going to go as follows. At number 5, I have Zach Moss out of Utah. I just like his physicality, really runs behind his pads well. Played really well for a solid Utah team, not a superstar Utah team, but a good Utah team. And they really relied on Zach Moss to carry their offense behind a really good defense. And I like Zach Moss, what he brings to the table. I think of teams like the Ravens, physical brand of football, downhill, smash mouth running game. He fits perfectly in that sort of system. He really finishes well. J.K. Dobbins is going to be my number 4 guy, out of Ohio State. What a career he had. True zone scheme type of back. I think of teams like the Niners, teams like the Falcons that use that outside zone style of running. He really fits well in that scheme because he has incredible vision. He sees that crease and boom, he shoots through it like a dart. That's why I like him. He really reads the whole well. Ball carrier vision is a plus for this guy. Can't catch the ball out of the backfield very much, though, or at least we haven't seen it, which is why I don't have him higher. But I think J.K. Dobbins is a good back. Number 3 is going to be Jonathan Taylor. Super high in terms of production, but also super high in terms of usage. He has a lot of wear and tear on the tires, which concerns me. I think of guys like Trent Richardson that came from Alabama that just got pounded on, in the SEC. Big Ten has some good defenses. I think of, Monte Ball out of Wisconsin as well. Breaks the NCAA rushing record, does nothing in the NFL, though, because you get to a point where you've been used so much, you don't have those bullets to just keep firing through that hole, through that line of scrimmage like you used to. And that could be a concern for him. The talent is there. He ran much better at the combine than I expected him to. He ran in the 4.3s, which is a great time for him. He's a powerful runner. I think a team that drafts him should draft him maybe in the late 2nd, early 3rd round. You could get 2 or 3 really good years out of him, but I don't know about long-term, how much he has left in the tank. So that's my opinion on Jonathan Taylor. Really good, but also has been used a lot. DeAndre Swift is going to be my number 2, which is a bit going off the consensus path just because I don't see him as a home run threat. He has a lot of wiggle. He has that juke. He can get people, missing in open field. But he played behind a really good offensive line at Georgia. We're going to see a couple of guys get drafted this year from that offensive line, a couple the year after too. I didn't see him taking those big holes that he had to run through and taking them to the house. I saw 15-yard gains, 20-yard gains. I didn't see that 60-yard touchdown, finishing speed that I wanted to see from DeAndre Swift. Plus for him, kind of opposed to J.K. Dobbins, is he's a very good receiver out of the backfield. He's very capable as a 3rd down back. At minimum, if you draft DeAndre Swift, you get a really good back on 3rd down to, take control of that offense, screen game, just option route game. And that's why I like DeAndre Swift. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be my number 1 back, coming from LSU, back-to-back LSU guys at number 1. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a total package to me. He can run in multiple schemes. He can run power. He can run zone. He has enough speed to finish long runs. He's not a total burner, but he also has power to run through arm tackles and break off some decent tackles. Smaller guy, 5'8", about 205. But if you see him on the field, yeah, he looks short, but he also looks well put together. He is an incredible receiving threat out of the backfield. He can be a threat on first, second, and third down on your offense. I think of guys like Alvin Kamara. I'm not saying he's going to become that, but you talk about Alvin Kamara, he's not a guy that has to come off the field. I look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the same breath. You put him on a team, you have a guy that you could put on the field on any single situation. He's going to perform, and that's why I think he's my number one guy. Wide receiver is probably the deepest position in this year's class. For wide receivers, you could put 10, 15 guys on your top five, shuffle through 10, 15 guys on the top five, and no one's going to argue with you because of how much talent is here. But for me, my number five guy is going to be T. Higgins. T. Higgins out of Clemson, a super long, super imposing body out there at wide receiver. Contested catch nightmare. This guy can make catches over the middle in the red zone, deep down the sideline. He's going to go up and make the catch, I would say, more than 70% of the time, just because he is such a monster at the catch point. 6'4", okay, long arms, unafraid to get up there and take some contact. He has better agility drill times than people expected. He ran in the 6-second range on his 3-cone at his pro day, which would have been good for number 6 at the combine. He didn't run a 40 at the combine, which is why people are questioning the speed. But I really like T. Higgins in terms of a red zone threat. I think of a team like the Packers could really use a guy like that. Justin Jefferson's going to be my number 4 out of LSU. Really enjoyed an incredible season with Joe Burrow this year. He lives predominantly in the slot, but that's okay. Most teams in the NFL are using 3 wide receiver sets at this point anyway. This is a guy you stick in the slot and you could say have fun for 5, 6, 7 years. He really has a good route tree. He is incredible after the catch, and he doesn't drop many passes. I really like him as a prospect, a 6'2" guy in the slot. He's not that little slot guy that we've seen, the Julian Edelmans, the Wes Welkers of the world. He is a longer guy, really, faster than people thought when he ran his 40 at the combine. He's a really good receiver to me. I would take him, in the top 20 if I was a team. Henry Ruggs is going to be my number 3 guy. He is a super electric player in open space, whether it's in your kick return game, jet sweep game, screen game, take the top off of the defense. Ruggs has the speed to really excel at any of those spots. The Tyreek Hill comparisons are perfectly fair for a guy like this because the speed does match, the player that we're trying to compare. I do think Tyreek Hill is a little bit faster, but Henry Ruggs is no slow dude. He is an absolute lightning bolt. You saw Alabama get him the ball in a variety of ways, and he excelled at all of them. I really like Henry Ruggs in the top 15. Jerry Jeudy is going to be my number 2 guy, another Alabama receiver. He is probably the best route runner in the entire class. I don't see many guys that are coming in and out of breaks the way he does. He can absolutely embarrass defensive backs coming off the line with his good release. He really does a good job in that respect. He's really good after the catch. He reminds me a lot of like an Odell Beckham back when he was with the Giants earlier in his career, a type of guy where you just say, hey, Odell, run a slant and take it to the house. And he can do that. He could take a slant 70 yards to the house without question. He's my number 2 guy just because CeeDee Lamb, who's my number 1, is just he's at another level. He has produced with 3 different quarterbacks at Oklahoma, and you could say, yeah, it's Baker Mayfield, it's Kyler Murray, it's Jalen Hurts, all really good quarterbacks, but he's the consistent factor. 6'3", 200 pounds. DeAndre Hopkins comparisons are more than fair for this guy. Contested catches over the middle, check. Yards after the catch, big check. Production every single year at Oklahoma, of course. This guy's my number 1 receiver. All these guys to me could be, top end of the first round talents, but because of this receiving class, they're going to fall down the board a little bit more than we expect. I think Jeudy and Lamb would be top 10 picks in any other year, and we're not talking about them getting drafted until the Jets at 11. So that just speaks to what type of talent is in this year's receiver class. Tackles are next, offensive tackles. I'm an offensive line guy. I watch a ton of film on these dudes, so I think I have a pretty good idea of who I'm going to round out my list with. Josh Jones is going to be my number 5 out of Houston. Really good pass protector. Questions come with him in terms of run blocking, but I think if he goes to a predominantly passing team, he's going to be, a quarterback's best friend because he has really good technique and he looks the part. 6'7", over 300 pounds. He can really play. Mekhi Becton out of Louisville is going to be my number 4. Mammoth of a human, 6'7", 370. Just an absolute nightmare in the run game. Leans on you and you're moving because you can't do anything about that size and that strength. Faster than people thought. He ran 5'1" in the 40. That's just That's as impressive as it gets. Big question comes with his ability to kick set in the pass game. Only about 70 true pass protection snaps last year at Louisville. Just based off what the offense called for. If he can get with a good O line coach that could teach him those kick set techniques, I really think he could be a shutdown left tackle and maybe the best one in this class. But because of you know the lower floor that you get with him, he's my number 4. Tristan Wirfs from Iowa is going to be my number 3. Similar concerns with him in terms of consistent technique and his pass protection, but another really dominant run blocker. Super athletic, ran in the 4.8 range at the combine, which is just absolutely crazy for a guy his size. Super strong, super athletic. Could really profile as a like all pro caliber guard. You think of Brandon Sheriff a couple years ago, now with Washington doing the same thing from the same school. Tristan Wirfs is going to most likely be a top 10 pick just based off the athleticism. You do have to refine that technique, though. Andrew Thomas will be my number 2 from Georgia. Just an absolute technician, super consistent producer on the O-line. That's what I really like about him. He has the capability to play right tackle, left tackle, and probably could kick inside the guard if you needed him to, so he's versatile in that way. He's been a consistent starter on that Georgia O-line that has been so dominant for the last couple of years, and I just see a professional guy, a master of his craft that is going to just be a solid dude on your line for years to come. And then Jedrick Wills is going to be my number 1. His technique is by far the most refined in this draft class. I love watching him pass protect. I love watching him run block. He's nasty. He's a finisher. He looks the part. He's 6'4". He's about 315 pounds. When you look at this guy, you think of Jason Peters. You think of Trent Williams, these type of guys that are just capable, all-pro caliber tackles. I would take Jedrick Wills in the top 5, and I wouldn't think twice about it. For the interior offensive line, at number 5, I have Natane Muti from Fresno State. This guy is so fun to watch, guys. You throw on YouTube, he has a highlight film from his freshman year where he is just absolutely mauling dudes, and I love it. He has that nastiness that, not many people have heard of this guy, which is funny, but that tape, watching that made me so excited to put him in my top 5 because he is just I was laughing watching him just bury defensive linemen and linebackers into the dirt on every run play. A lot of fun to watch. Nasty dude, a little undersized, but I think he has injury concerns. He's had a lot of lower body injuries. If he could check those out and be healthy, I think he's a dominant type of starter in the league. Lloyd Cushenberry is my number 4 guy. Versatile, can play both guard spots, can play center. He's bigger than most centers would be. He's about 6'4", 325-ish. Really good pedigree coming from a championship, team in LSU, working with Joe Burrow. Again, Joe Burrow in an advanced offense, so was Lloyd Cushenberry. He blocked a variety of schemes in terms of run game, a lot of different pass protection sets. I really think he could be a day 1 starter for a team looking for a center or a guard. Isaiah Wilson's my number 3, and I know he's listed as a tackle for this year's draft, but similar to how I talked about Tristan Wirfs, I think Isaiah Wilson would be, an even better guard at the next level. He is certainly big enough to do it. He is athletic enough to do it in terms of being able to pull in stuff in a power run game. But to me, I don't think he has the kick set ability to exist at tackle for his entire career. I think he could be a Pro Bowl caliber player at guard. For me, Tyler Biadasz is going to be my number 2 interior offensive lineman out of Wisconsin. He falls victim to just being a guy that we've heard about for a couple of years now, and scouts have, started to nitpick at what he provides. To me, he is a first to second round pick caliber player, but because the tackle class is a little bit deeper, because there's some other positions that are a little bit deeper in this year's draft, he might get pushed a little bit further down the list. He could play center, obviously. I think he could bump over to guard if he had to, maybe not as well as a couple of other guys like Cushenberry could, but he could certainly exist at a guard spot. He could block in a variety of schemes. I think he'd be a really good zone blocker. I think he could play in a power scheme. But I look at a team like the Niners that need either a center replacement for Weston Richburg or a guard, because that's probably their weakest spot on their offense. I look at that as a really good fit. Cesar Ruiz from Michigan is my number 1 guy, another versatile guy. can block in a variety of schemes. You can see where I'm going with these rankings. If you are versatile, can play multiple positions, and can block in both power and zone schemes in the run game, you're going to be high on my list. Cesar Ruiz is athletic enough to play any spot on the line. He could probably, I mean, if you ask me, I think he could probably bump over to right tackle and you would survive with him. He is a really athletic player for such a big guy in the middle. He is, he has had tons of production at Michigan. Even though Michigan hasn't been the greatest program, Ruiz has been a consistent performer on that line. He's a first round pick to me. And I know not a lot of people have him as a first round pick. He's a first round pick to me just based off talent. Tight ends for me, number 5, please excuse the pronunciation. This is a tough one, but Albert Okwuegbunam from Missouri. I know I messed it up, but please take it easy on me. Out of Missouri, the tight end, he is an athletic guy, really good up the seam, good target in the red zone, a lot of touchdown passes over at Missouri over the years, just not a very good blocker. Spread scheme over there at Missouri hasn't really been asked to do it. So if you draft him, you're looking at him as like an athletic move tight end. Thaddeus Moss is my number 4 guy, the son of Randy Moss, Hall of Fame wide receiver. You would think, being the kid of Randy Moss, you would just be a stud receiver type of player, especially a tight end, but he's not. He's actually a really willing run blocker, which surprised me on tape. His ability to catch the ball as well as block bumped him up from that 7 range up to this 4 spot. I really think he's a do-it-all type of tight end. Really good upside. Harrison Bryant from FAU is going to be my number 3 guy. He is smaller school guy, but a ton of production. I don't think he's a superstar tight end. This tight end class in general is not very deep this year or talented, but I do think there's some starting caliber players on this class. But Harrison Bryant, I think he's on the fringe. He could play a really good tight end for you, maybe a really good number 2. Good receiver, okay blocker, not the best, but a lot of production at FAU. I think he's my 3rd guy. Adam Trotman for Dayton kind of comes in the same sentiment, not really the best blocker, but a really good receiver. I think he's a better receiver than Harrison Bryant is. He lived in that slot role at Dayton. He did a really good job there. Reminds me of, tight ends like Jimmy Graham that don't necessarily bump in line at tight end and block people to death, but he lives out in the slot, in the red zone, can really make good catches. A team like the Patriots looking for a receiving threat at tight end can really use a guy like this. And that leads me to Cole Kmet from Notre Dame. Shout out Mike, Notre Dame fan. He's my number 1 tight end on this list. He comes from a really good pedigree. Talk about Tyler Eifert, Kyle Rudolph, guys of that nature that have had success coming into the NFL out of Notre Dame. He's the same type of guy. Willing blocker, really good receiver, good possession guy, red zone threat. He's kind of the jack of all trades, the guy that you look for. I said Thaddeus Moss is also a jack of all trades. Thaddeus Moss does things well. I think Cole Kmet does everything at an above average rate, and that's why he's my number 1 guy. All right, let's move on to the defense now. For the defense, interior defensive line is a really deep position this year. Neville Gallimore from Oklahoma is my number 5 guy. He played in a variety of alignments, over the nose, at 1, at 3. He has really natural pass rush ability. He's just a disruptive type of player, faster than people thought after he ran at the combine. I like him in a scheme where he can just pin his ears back and be a penetrator, and he'll make a team very happy. Ross Blacklock is going to be my number 4 guy from TCU. He is way more mobile than I thought he would be coming from a defensive tackle alignment, but TCU really used him in a lot of twist game stunts, get over to the corner, get on the tackle, slant across to the opposite A-gap, and he did a really good job at that. I think he's a starting caliber player. I think of a team like the Vikings that needs to replace lost defensive linemen in the middle is a perfect fit for him. Marlon Davidson is listed as an end for most people in this draft, but he's over 300 pounds. To me, I think he can really kick inside and play a really solid 3 technique for a team. When I say 3 technique, I'm talking about lining up at D tackle over the guard rather than lining up in the A gap. He lines up between the guard and the tackle a little bit more on the outside, where your speed pass rusher threats from the defensive line come from. And I also think he could survive playing in a 5 technique over the tackle in a 3-4 scheme. He's a disruptive player. He benefits from playing with our number 1 guy on this list, who I will get to. But I like his versatility. He can play on the end, but he can also bump inside. Javon Kinlaw from South Carolina is going to be my number 2. He is a super athletic player. He's the best player to come out of South Carolina since Jadeveon Clowney, and I have no doubts about that. Super disruptive on the D line, really large man, 6'5", 320, really good get off, really pushes the pocket well. And I think he has a ton of upside for a team drafting in the top 15 to take advantage of. Derek Brown's my number one. What a year for Derek Brown. He comes back to school after, he could have had the ability to declare last year. He probably would have been a first-round pick had he come out last year, but this guy vaults himself into the top 10 without question based off of his production at Auburn in his senior year. Massive human. He's, another guy that's like 6'5", 325, pushing 330, but a super mobile athlete, really good lateral quickness, really shows the ability to push the pocket. And I don't want to exaggerate when I say it, but he is the closest thing to Ndamukong Suh that I've seen coming out of college in terms of just being an absolute Hulk in the middle. We've seen guys like Aaron Donald just be penetrators that shoot through that gap and get into the backfield. But in terms of just I got two offensive linemen on me, and I'm going to walk you guys right back into the quarterback. I haven't seen the ability to do that like Derek Brown does since Ndamukong Suh at Nebraska. And if you watched Ndamukong Suh at Nebraska, you know what I'm talking about. For edge defenders, pretty chalk here. I have Julian Okwara as my number 5 out of Notre Dame. Really fast, really high upside with this guy, but not a ton of production. Dealt with injury last year as well. If he can get to a team like the Ravens that really know how to develop their pass rushers well, I think he can be a superstar in the making just based off of the athletic, build that he has. He just has to get in the right system. AJ Epinesa, totally different guy out of Iowa. He ran a terrible he had a terrible combine, ran a slow 40. Teams totally bumped him down on their boards because of that. But this guy has produced every single year. And for me, as a D-line, coach, I don't care how you get it done as long as you get it done. And for him, he produces. He gets sack numbers. He's good in the run game. He produced in the Big Ten, which is one of the best conferences in college football. I think he is the perfect fit for a Seattle type of team. They just lost Clowney. Get this guy, big end. He could set the edge on first and second down and then kick inside the 3 technique and rush the passer on third. He's a really good player, and I hope he doesn't make his way out of the first round because he is absolutely a first-round caliber player. Yetur Gross-Matos is my number 3 from Penn State. Bigger end. Reminds me a lot of Trey Flowers in terms of being a run stopper first and then a pass rusher second. I think his pass rush is developing and he has the athletic frame to make it happen. But for me right now, I staple him in with a team like the Patriots that really like those D ends that can play all over the place. I think Matos can do that. He has a lot of upside. And again, I talk about the Patriots, one more time. He would be a perfect fit there just because they will be able to channel that athleticism and that pass rushing potential that he has and make him explode into a dominant player. I really hope he can land in that type of a situation, maybe a Tennessee also, where, just good defensive coaches that can really capitalize on his potential because he has a ton of it. K'Lavon Chaisson from LSU is going to be my number 2. Just an absolute, bullet of an outside linebacker / edge rusher. Really explosive off the ball. Really came on strong in the playoff run. I couldn't take my eyes off of him on screen while I was watching it live. I think he is, in many other draft classes, he could be the number 1 guy on many boards just because of his athletic build. He also can drop into coverage a little bit better than people give him credit for. I think he's a perfect 3-4 outside linebacker. You think of teams, again, like the Titans, other teams that could use that speed off the edge. Even the Dolphins, at pick 18 would be a really good spot for him. To me, a little undersized, but I'm not concerned about it. I don't think he's a base 4.3 end. You usually want your guys to be in that 260 range at that spot, but I think he could survive there certainly. Reminds me of a lot of a Bruce Irvin when he came out of West Virginia, just super fast, super physical off the line, but a little bit undersized. Chase Young is going to be my number 1. Of course he is. Don't want to throw that term generational talent out there too much, but it's hard not to when you're talking about Chase Young. I mean, just look at the numbers. Look at the highlight tape. This guy is such a refined, just beast. He's a refined beast. He has the ability to, use a plethora of pass rush moves but he's also athletic enough to just pin his ear back and bend off the edge like a Von Miller or a Khalil Mack and just get to the quarterback based off of how fast he got off the ball. He's solid in the run game. Uh, I think a lot of people are just overanalyzing him at this point, looking for things wrong. He is the best edge rusher to come out in a long time. The Myles Garrett comparisons are certainly warranted. The Clowney comparisons are warranted. This guy would be the number one pick if Joe Burrow wasn't the best quarterback to come out in a while. He would be the number one pick, and people wouldn't even think twice about it. That's the type of player he is. He'll go to Washington, and he's going to be a psychopath for people to deal with on defense. At linebacker, I have Malik Harrison from Ohio State as my number one. As my number 5 guy. Malik Harrison, versatile player, could play middle linebacker, could play outside linebacker in a 4-3. Decent cover guy, good athleticism. Ohio State has really produced a couple of solid linebackers over the last couple of years, and I think he's the next one off the list. Zach Bond from Wisconsin is going to be my number 4. Really versatile player. Could play edge defender if you wanted him to. Reminds me a lot of like a Kyle Van Noy. He's not going to be like a 13 sack, 14 sack a year guy, but he's certainly going to get you 6 or 7 of them if you put him on the edge. Can cover well. From a linebacker spot. I think that's an underrated part of his game. He's athletic. He's versatile. He's perfect for a Tennessee that's looking for a guy at outside linebacker opposite Harold Landry. I think he's a first-round caliber player, but he might find himself in the early second. Kenneth Murray from Oklahoma, my number 3, really talented guy, tons of production, a tackle machine, just a throwback linebacker. He may not be like the most phenomenal cover guy, but at 6'2", 240, he runs sideline to sideline effortlessly, and he's a plugger in the run game. I really like him for like a Ravens team that just lost C.J. Mosley and Patrick Onwuasor, the last couple of years. Replace him with Murray, and I think he's going to be a really good pro. Patrick Queen from LSU is my number 2. Athletic guy. I mean, over the last couple of years, we've seen so many good linebackers come out of LSU. You think of the Devin Whites and you think of the Deion Jones, and this guy is in that same breath. Athletic, can cover, can play well on the run, can rush the passer. He's a do-it-all type of guy playing that middle linebacker spot, and I think he's a first-round pick come Thursday. Isaiah Simmons from Clemson. You could say he's a linebacker. You could say he's a corner. You could say he's an edge rusher. You could say he's a safety. You wouldn't be wrong because he does all of these things so well. I think linebacker is his best place. I think that's his home when he comes into the NFL. But I think teams, whoever drafts him, is going to put him in a variety of places to succeed. He's just a hunter. He goes out there, he looks for the ball carrier, and he finds him 90% of the time. The ability to rush the passer, the ability to cover. He's super athletic. He's super fast. Really long. He is the modern day NFL linebacker. Teams are going to run up to the podium to try and get this guy. At corner, number 5, Jeff Gladney. Don't think he has the highest upside, but I do think he's a solid player coming from a well-coached TCU squad. Can live in the slot if you want him to, over the years on your team. But he could survive outside. He certainly has the athleticism to do so. A little bit shorter than you'd like to see, but I think he's a really solid player. A team like the Cowboys in the first round could certainly use a corner. The Vikings, I could see that type of a fit. Maybe he makes it to the 30s where a team like the Niners could go after him or the Chiefs. But regardless, I think he's a first-round pick just because of his ability to do multiple things. Christian Fulton is my number 4 guy, a little bit lower than most people have him. But I think of Christian Fulton, I think of Tre'Davious White, just a solid player, solid cover corner, willing to do anything he needs to win, to beat his guy. He's not the most athletic guy, and that's okay. I think he is really good. He's sticky in his coverage. He comes from a really well-coached LSU squad. I mean, you think of pedigree. I don't think of many better schools that have produced defensive backs over the years than LSU. So he's coming from a good crop, in a good situation. He's a first-round pick, no question. The only reason he's ranked at number 4 is just because that long speed doesn't seem to be up there with the guys on ahead of him on this list. A.J. Terrell from Clemson, my number 3. People wanted to question him because he got beat a little bit during the national championship game. I don't really care about that. He went against Jamar Chase, who's going to be a top 5 pick in next year's draft. And guess what? He kept up with him for a majority of the game. Jamar Chase just made contested catches against him. He was in position to make the play, and he didn't. Okay. Do you really knock him that much for it? Maybe in terms of ball skills and talent there, but in terms of athleticism, in terms of agility, speed, cover ability, he was with him the entire game against the best receiver in college football. I didn't knock him for that. He's been a really good producer. He comes from a winning program. He's won a national championship. He's my number 3 guy. CJ Henderson from Florida is going to be my number 2. Long, athletic corner, comes from Florida, where they've produced a couple of defensive backs to really shine in the NFL. I think he's a guy that can easily be a top 10 pick. I think of the Jaguars at 9. I think of a team like the Falcons maybe looking to trade up and get him. He's 6'1". He's close to 200 pounds. He's really athletic. He ran in the 4.3s at the combine. I think he is a guy that, if our number 1 dude wasn't here, he'd probably be the best corner in the draft, in many drafts. Jeff Okudah is going to be my number 1 out of Ohio State. Defensive back you right now. You could say LSU is the same way, but in terms of corners over the last couple of years, Ohio State's got him beat. Marshawn Lattimore, Denzel Ward, Jeff Okudah now. The Eli Apples get worked in there, but that is what it is. I think Jeff Okudah is more towards that Marshawn Lattimore and that Denzel Ward, type of range. He's athletic enough to play. He ran in the high 4.4s, which is not the fastest for corners, but his technique takes him to the ball. Such a willing tackler too in the open field, which I love. He's long enough to play. He's a top 5 pick to me. And I think most scouts would agree. You could see him anywhere from 3 to the Lions to maybe that 7 range with the Panthers. He's a really good player and my number 1 corner. Rounding out this list at safety, we have Jeremy Chin from Southern Illinois. Small school guy, big safety, but athletic. A lot of people think he could potentially bump down and play at linebacker. I don't see the tackling ability necessarily for that, but I do think he's a really good player, really athletic, a solid second-round pick. But the small school thing does scare people. And the same thing can be said for Kyle Duggar, who is another really athletic guy and looks really good on tape. But he looks really good on tape because he's going against teams that Lenore Ryan is playing. They're not going against the Alabamas. They're not going against, the top SEC schools. They're playing, they're playing D2. And I think he could be a really good player, but you have to give him time to develop and work up to the speed of NFL defenses. He's ranked at 4, and the same thing with Chin, just because their athleticism jumps off the screen. Grant Delpit from LSU, probably the guy that experienced the biggest drop-off from one year to the next. Delpit was considered a top 10 pick going into this year, and because of a couple injuries, a lot of questions got raised about his tackling ability. He sort of got bumped down, similar to how Greedy Williams did last year. Greedy Williams was supposed to be a top end of the first round type of pick. And then everybody started talking about his ability to tackle, and all of a sudden he's going in the second round. Similar for Grant Delpit, just at a different position, safety versus corner. Delpit, to me, is a first-round caliber type of player. He could play single high safety. He could play in the box. He could play in the slot and cover, slot receivers. He's athletic enough to do so. Really good ball skills, and I don't think the tackling stuff is really much of a concern. He showed to be a good tackler the first couple of years at LSU, and I think the injuries made him think, I'm going to get drafted next year. Maybe I'll take it a little bit easy. I think more people got upset just because he did that while LSU was in the middle of a national championship run. Xavier McKinney, my number 2 guy from Bama. Jack of all trades, kind of like a Minkah Fitzpatrick. He could play up top. He could play in the slot. He can even play like a sub linebacker for you. Really good tackler, not the fastest guy, ran 4.6 at the combine. I'm not really going to knock him for that. Did I think he was faster? Yeah, but maybe he's football fast. He has good ball skills. He can come off the edge and blitz. I like him in a system that allows him to do a lot of different things. It leads me to my number 1 guy, and the final guy we'll talk about here on, in this ranking, Antoine Winfield Jr. out of Minnesota, son of former first-round pick Antoine Winfield, who played for the Bills and also played for the 49ers for a lot of years. This guy is the closest thing to Earl Thomas that I've seen coming out of the draft. And I'm not kidding when I say that. You put on the film of this guy, watch him play. He is an absolute psycho in center field for Minnesota. He, lines up in the middle of the field, and he can get sideline to sideline in the snap of a finger. It's crazy to see. He gets kind of knocked because he's had a couple of injury issues, and I just don't think his name really got called until this year when Minnesota started to build their program up and they started to get that national recognition that they deserved. Antoine Winfield Jr. is a phenomenal safety. and a lot of people are sleeping on him because he's considered to be a second-round pick. I would take this guy in the top 20 of the draft. It might be a hot take, and people might disagree with me, but he is a really good player, and I have him at my number one safety. So, guys, there you have it. That's kind of where my head is at, just top fives at each position. I really appreciate you guys making this first episode something fun. You guys have a comment, you guys have something you disagree with me about or something you do agree with me about, leave it down below in the comment section. I will get back to it and we will have a little conversation about it. Draft Thursday, I'm super excited to see it. And once again, thank you guys for watching. Peace out. And this is D4 Sports, sports entertainment for the walk-ons of life. Be good, everybody.